Howdy, I'm Farmer Joe. I've got a 10,000 hectare farm over in the southeast wheatbelt of WA. I've just started to decide to put in a bit of livestock, moving to sort of a mixed rotation between livestock and cropping. So I've called in a couple of experts to help me deal with that. I've got some sandy gravel soil with about 4.5 pH, and I've used a bit of sulfur urea in the past. Now I've given my agronomist a call to come out and meet me in the field and give me a bit of advice on what I should be doing. G'day mate.
G'day mate,
Brian.
my name's Elliot.
I'm assuming you've been briefed on what I've got on my sort of farm.
Yeah, I've been told a little bit.
I'm trying to introduce some livestock and a bit of pasture to feed those livestock. So I was just wondering sort of what recommendations you have for like what crops I should be going and about how much land I should be sacrificing.
Yeah, I think you should start off small given that you haven't had livestock before. So about 20% of your land, so 2,000 hectares, and your rotation of wheat, barley and canola, I think you should put the leg pasture before the canola. So have a legume pasture so it's nitrogen fixing. So the canola, given it's your most valuable crop, should benefit the most to help your income. And I think the pasture should be either like yellow ceradella and subclover, maybe a mixture, or you keep them separate.
Now I've used a bit of sulfur urea on my land in the past. Is that going to cause too much of an issue for me?
That is going to cause an issue for the pastures, given that we're going with broadleafs. And so after we've got soil testing done, which will be in the next few months, we'll be able to determine what areas do have sulfur urea problems. So we'll stick to the wheat and the barley on that. However, there have been some new releases of canola cultivars that are tolerant to sulfur urea grounds, so we might look into that. However, just make sure in the future with the rotation that we're going not to use sulfur urea on any of the barley, given that after barley there's the broadleaf pastures in the paddock, so you've got to just keep an eye on that. But other than that, sulfur urea can still be used on the wheat because there's the grass after that. The residues won't be any more than 1 year with your ground. They'll be washed away reasonably quickly.
Cool. So with the soil test, am I going to get much info about the pH? Because I'm pretty sure I run at about 4.5. Is that going to be too much of an issue across the land?
Well, given that you've had soil testing done in the past and you haven't amended the pH at all, so I don't think any of it will change, and because the groundwater hasn't really risen because we haven't had much rain, so I think you'll be alright in that sense. However, if you do want to address the pH and you want to improve your yields, I would suggest adding some lime in before your most sensitive crops to pH, so your wheat. So to increase your pH from 4.5 to 6 would be what you want. You got to add about 4.5 tonnes of lime per hectare. However, I wouldn't suggest adding more than 3 tonnes of lime per hectare, since it can cause some issues. So we could start off with 3 tonnes of lime before the wheat, and then rotate that around. So whenever you're planting wheat, before you seed, just spread the lime and then use the drill to mix the lime into the ground, and I think that'll improve your yields quite a lot.
No problem. Sounds fantastic. Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Good talking to you.
Alright, so now, because I really know nothing about animals, because I'm a cropper, I've decided to call in a livestock expert to give me a hand. Hey, Mr. Claw, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you, mate.
So I'm assuming you've been briefed on sort of what I've got going, and I'm going to try and introduce some legumes. On average, I think you get about 4 to 5 DSC a year round, and I'm looking at introducing some sheep to try and get some livestock into my farming system.
Sure, that's fantastic. So you've got quite a few options with sheep, depends what sort of system you want to run. So you can go for a pure wool production system, you can do a pure meat production system, or you can do a dual purpose where you have both sheep meat and wool production. given your rainfall and carrying capacity, you're looking at about a 4 or 5 DSE per hectare. So given that characteristic, we'd be looking more towards focusing on wool production. Just given the feed conversion, wool's a really simple product to make. It doesn't require too much energy or extra protein. And then a secondary focus on meat sheep as well. All right, Farmer Joe, so what options would you like to pursue there?
So given the sort of scenarios you've laid out, I'm thinking focusing on wool with a little bit of lambing on the side. The last option really would be the best, I think. What sort of sheep do you reckon I use or breeds make it the best?
So given your area and having a focus on wool, we'd be looking at a merino ewe. That will produce a really high quality wool. We can try and target a low micron, which will give you a good price per kilo of wool. And then if we get some other characteristics like a nice tight crimp, that'll help reduce any dust and foreign bodies penetrating the wool. In terms of the meat production, you'd be wanting to look at doing a first cross lamb. So we'd be looking at a white Suffolk sire with the merino ewe. And this will produce a nice first cross lamb, which will have some better carcass qualities, some higher growth rates, and it generally gets a bit of a premium at the market. So that'll be a nice combination of both wool and lamb production for your area.
Fantastic, thanks mate. Alright, now I've been speaking to my agronomist and he's recommended me chucking some legumes in for a bit of pasture. So with my DSC about 4 to 5, what do you think my stocking rate's going to be? How many sheep can I actually manage to have on my property?
Great question. So with a DSE of about 4 to 5 and 2,000 hectares for your grazing, you'd be looking at about 8,000 DSE. In terms of working out your stocking rate, well, if we're looking at, say, lambing percentage of 160, which is a bit ambitious, but good to strive for the stars, you'd be looking at having around 2,500 ewes, assuming that lambing rate, and then also to service those ewes and get them the conception rates you need, you'd be looking at about 1 ram per 40 ewes, in which case you'd have 60 rams to service your 2,500 ewes.
Alright, well thanks for your help mate, and I look forward to contacting you further when I have problems with my sheep, because I know nothing about them.
No worries.
Alright, now not that I don't trust the agronomist and the animal expert, but I'm thinking about doing a bit of experimenting, trying to stretch my boundaries a little bit with what I can grow and try and optimise everything as much as I can. So I've been on the phones with the esteemed Adelaide University and got a hold of a researcher who's going to come out and give a look at my property and see what he can recommend. Alright, now as you can see from my Adelaide Uni vest, I'm clearly a different person and I'm here to talk to you, Farmer Joe, about what we can sort of do to stretch the boundaries. Now, I've had a look at some of the soil tests. I've noticed that there's a few areas that have reasonably high salinity. So I'm thinking that if we can try and isolate those areas of potentially low production, we can try and plant some salt bush there to try and maybe increase the sort of productivity and give your sheep a bit of extra feed over those summer months. Now, as what salt bush I'm recommending, I'm thinking old man salt bush, just because it's a really hardy salt bush. It's got good seed viability and it grows quite well. Now, I'm thinking to start with, just to make sure that we can actually grow it here, if we get some shrubs in and plant them around the place, we can start to identify if there's any pests in the area. That way we can get a hold on them really quickly before we actually start to plant too many. And if we can't grow it there, that way we haven't sowed massive amounts and lost a heap of money. Now, speaking of soil tests, I noticed that you've got quite a bit of pH, so it's quite low in some spots and it could be a bit of a problem. Now, I've saw that your agronomist recommend about 3 tonnes per hectare in some spots. Now, I think that's a great idea, and I reckon we should try and stretch the limits a little bit and try and get a bit of variety into your system. I'm thinking that there's a specific type of lucerne that we might be able to grow that's done quite well in the Mallee. Now, this new variety is called Silverland GT, so I'm thinking that if we start to go some trial plots of about 2 metres by 10 metres, and don't worry, I know you've got a really big air seeder, but I reckon I can get us hold of a smaller one that we can just loan out from one of the local trial plot farmers. So if we get that in and sow a few trial plots and see what we can grow, I'm thinking that if we direct seed one with no lime added, so we can get sort of a baseline, see if it will grow without adding any lime at all. I'm not expecting that it will, but if it does, it'll be fantastic. We can save some money on lime. But then if we go with your agronomist's recommendation of about 3 tonnes per hectare direct, on some other plots, and then push it further to, I'm thinking about maybe 5 tonnes. But we go in increments, so we might go 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5 tonnes. Then if we sow, it depends on how much you really want to give away, like how much land you're willing to sacrifice for this. But if it works out, it'll be a great way to sort of bridge that feed gap, because lucerne grows quite well in the summer, and I've noticed that you're getting a little bit more summer rainfall lately, so it'll be a great way to sort of introduce a bit of variety to your sheep and give a bit more feed to them. Alright, and if you can do all that and keep up with it and keep an eye on it and just take some photos and send it through to me, we'll be laughing. Alright, well, it's good seeing you, mate, and I'm glad to come out here to the sunny WA. Alright, I'd just like to thank all of you guys for helping me out so much, and sorry for being so much of a bother. I don't know too much about sheep, but I'm looking forward to learning a bit more and trying to push my boundaries with the research as much as possible. I'm looking forward to getting some merinos in for my wool production. Alright, thanks fellas.